Wait, don't go anywhere. This video is filled with great and wonderful information, including websites you can go to get detailed information about the elections.
Piece of news that just came in. It looks like the Supreme Court, and specifically Amy Coney Barrett, has rejected a request by a taxpayers group in Wisconsin to receive emergency relief and block the Biden administration's student debt relief program that's set to start in the next few days. Why Amy Coney Barrett? Because she is responsible for applications coming from cases that were heard in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, which includes the state of Wisconsin. And the docket information doesn't have any reference, so it suggests that she didn't refer the case to the rest of the Supreme Court before rejecting it. So it looks like, at least for the moment, the Biden administration's student debt relief program is going to start as planned this weekend, I believe. But this is just one of the many uphill battles that the program is facing. So we'll see how the other challenges will go. For right now, at least, the Supreme Court has said thanks, but no thanks.
Everyone, welcome to the show. So the Oath Keepers trial is about halfway through at this point. We're just headed towards the end of week 3. At the beginning of the week, the jury was shown numerous surveillance videos from the Virginia hotel where they had their weapons stash, that trove of weapons for their quick reaction force. Various Oath Keepers, including some of these defendants, were seen carrying weapons in or hauling weapons to their rooms on luggage carts. The defense attorneys tried to play down the weapons. They said, oh, this is common practice. This is just what the group did every time they attended a protest. But the prosecutor presented bank records showing that the group's leader, Elmer Stewart Rhodes, spent $20,000 on weapons just during his road trip from Texas to DC. So obviously there's something unique that he planned or intended about the Capitol protest. Rhodes stopped a minimum of 6 times, they showed, to purchase assault-style rifles, ammunition, and scopes. And the prosecutor showed that on January 5th, he also sent numerous night vision devices to a woman named Marcia Lessard. So she ran an organization called Virginia Freedom Keepers. Lessard, by the way, is an associate of Roger Stone, and she was issued a permit for January 6th to protest on the Capitol grounds. So kind of a strange thing for Lessard to need night vision goggles for a daytime peaceful protest, quote unquote, at the Capitol, right? Rhodes' attorney kind of threw the rest of the Oath Keepers under the Trump train, by the way. He pointed out that, Rhodes wasn't seen carrying any weapons into the hotel, only his members did that. Rhodes didn't do that. And then the defense also noted that the weapons were never used or were never moved from the hotel to the Capitol. But an FBI agent who testified told the jury, quote, "The armed rebellion wasn't over." And then she explained how the group continued to plan for an uprising even after January 6th. The agent also said, quote, "The point of the QRF was to prevent Biden from taking power in whatever form that took. I think the QRF was meant to occupy DC." And the government shared with the jury how he continued to buy weapons after January 6th. That's something I've shared with you guys here. The prosecutor also shared segments from a podcast that was recorded the morning of January 6th. It really disproves the Oath Keepers' defense that they were only in DC to provide security to VIPs. Oath Keepers members Ed Vallejo and a man named Todd Kandaris were guests on the show. And at one point, Kandaris told the host, quote, "We are the final check and balance to this process. Is there a shot heard round the world moment? The possibility definitely exists." So Vallejo will be on trial next month. For some reason, though, Kandaris hasn't been charged. But the most damning evidence presented this week so far has come from the testimony of an ex-Oath Keepers member, a man named Jason Dolan. Dolan is one of the members who accepted a cooperation deal. He's a 46-year-old Marine veteran. He joined the group after the 2020 election, so he was very new to the group at this point. And he confirmed that the first time he met with the group, Roger Stone was there. He made an appearance and he spoke to the group. And the prosecutor shared an encrypted message that Dolan sent to fellow Oath Keepers on December 6th of 2020. In this message, Dolan was struggling with how to tell his family about his January 6th plans, which he said included, quote, no pay, no coming back, no awards, no homecoming, and if I'm lucky, I get a prison sentence tagged with treason or a bullet from the very people I would protect. Then Dolan added, quote, I think my biggest trouble is trying to convince myself to say goodbye to my family after all they had to endure with the likelihood of never seeing them again. He admitted that he was preparing himself for the possibility of death and going to DC on January 6th. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about what they had planned. And Dolan told the jury that he knew it would be, quote, treasonous, fighting against what I saw as an illegitimate form of government. However, he said it was clear from what Rhodes and others said that they planned to, quote, act to stop the certification of the election by any means necessary. That's why we brought our firearms. Those were his words. And Dolan admitted that his intention was to terrorize the lawmakers. He told the jury, quote, I wanted them to be afraid of me. If they weren't going to do, in my perspective, do the right thing, maybe they could be scared into doing the right thing. And he also admitted to attempting to destroy evidence. He reset his cell phone. He also deleted photos and encrypted messages. So the defense tried to undermine his credibility by pointing to his history of alcohol abuse. But Dolan readily admitted to drinking excessively. He said he was trying to kill the pain of injuries which he sustained during his time in the military. And then Dolan also conceded that had Trump invoked the Insurrection Act, quote, there would have been a lot of violence. There you have it, guys. I mean, he was on the inside. He saw and heard what was going on. He knew what they were planning. I don't know. We'll see.
Hey, everybody. Interesting news today. Steve Bannon was set for sentencing today. Steve Bannon, of course, is a diehard Trumper and this is true, is always the answer to the question, what if Nick Nolte had a deranged younger brother? Federal Judge Carl Nichols sentenced Bannon to 4 months in prison and fined him $6,500. The prosecutors had asked for 6 months. I personally thought he would get 6 months, but this is Judge Nichols. This gentleman, appointed by Trump. Regardless, he has been sentenced to 4 months in prison. Bannon intends to appeal his conviction. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I have Nancy Jean here. She might be on this side. It's all backwards. Anyways, onwards. She has this clever idea that we are going to push out some information on how to get political information. Sometimes that's confusing. A lot of people just don't know where to go or what website and this, that, and the other. So she's going to kind of go through each one of them and tell you what information you can get in this website and this website and stuff like that. So I'm going to literally hand it over to her, and she's going to be teaching us how to do this. So go for it, Nancy.
Okay, why should you listen to a woman with vivid purple hair? I dyed it this morning, so it's vivid now. It fades. If you want to see when I did something, just watch my hair color change. I used to run political campaigns, and one of the things that you have to do when you're running a political campaign, we're going to start the most basic. If you're thinking about running for office, I have a 10-question survey that I ask people. And then after we go over them, I've actually convinced people they really didn't want to run because they didn't want their spouse to be exposed to things. They didn't want to spend the time It's a real commitment of time for people to run for office if they're going to do it effectively. And of course, the biggest one is the thing most politicians hate to do is ask for money. And money is, because of how our campaigns are structured in this country, they are the root of all evil. They are the root of all good, too. So if you want good, you got to put money up. The bad guys know to put the money up so they can tell you lies. So how can you weed out a race? Well, first of all, if you're looking at from the very beginning structure, you look at the last person who ran and they look at where they get their money from. Now, the sites I'm going to give you are places that are nationally known. The FEC is actually, we pay for it by the government, but all politicians have to report their legal money. Now, you notice I did say legal money because there's a bunch of them that don't report it like they should. But they have to report their money and let you know who is paying for them to be here. And the reason I picked Ballotpedia is my top one when people say, where should I go? You can get money. You can get questionnaires, which I think are very important. I have a real hard time voting for a candidate who's so arrogant they don't think they have to fill out a simple questionnaire so that anyone who wants to look at that race can see where they stand. And there's a lot of, I mean, as you know, MAGA people don't like to answer questions, don't like to answer them truthfully. But on Ballotpedia, you can get it for any state, any race, down to lowest level. They track that stuff. Then the other ones who are big on questionnaires, so if you think, do my views tie with them, is the League of Women Voters. And they're all over the country. And when I went looking for, they have a national website which will take you to all the states. And then depending on the state, because they are kind of independent of each other after that, they kind of have a pattern that they use, but each state has kind of its own set of rules because they, states all have, well, they all have their own set of rules. Then the place, if you want to know real money questions, it's the FEC. And I know people go, oh my God, the FEC. Since they really computerized and cleaned it up, it's not that hard to go in there. And what you can see very plainly in the FEC, which is also where Ballotpedia and the League of Women Voters get their fund reports from the federal level, you can see who's paying this person to be there. And that's one things where Dems started really outrun the Republicans during Obama's time with small donations from small donors. So you saw a well of people who chose to support them. And I can tell you about people supporting you. If you get someone to give so much as $5 to your race, chances are very good if you can convert them to someone at the polling place, they will vote for you. So money is not everything, but you ain't going anywhere without it. And if you want to change the politics in this country as quickly as possible, you'll go back to the McCain-Feingold bill, which restricted how money was given to races. Then what if it's just ideology? What if it's just what's kind of going out there, what's floating out there? And in particular, there's a place called the Brennan Center, which is in New York. And they work really hard, and they're working really hard on the voters' rights cases where states are trying to strip back voter rights. There are attorneys from Brennan Center, attorneys funded by Brennan Center, who are working all that. And I think that's kind of an overview of where we're going to look at. How do I get involved in politics? How did I become involved in politics? My mother was Republican Woman of the Year several times in Illinois. And as a small child, she made me go out on a cold fall day and stick Nixon stickers on people's houses. I mean, you kind of see how it all works. And, it's like if your parents are really active in a church, or if they're active in a social club, or they're country western dancers. I mean, whatever their hobby was, as a kid, when I was growing up, you got sucked into it. And so I learned how to be part of politics. If you get somewhere and a campaign's going on and you're interested in it, you find out who's got the most lowest dirt level jobs. Building yard signs, putting yard signs out for people, all that kind of stuff. Doesn't matter. Not the big glam jobs, not the standing around. And how would I use Ballotpedia if I was just a person? I'd open it up. I'd open it up to my state. I'd see if any of the election laws had changed. And if you've never looked at the election laws, just see what they are. And then I would pick out what they will tell you. If you give them your address, they'll tell you the whole slate of everybody you can vote for, from school district up to federal level. And then you can just spend your time digging around, looking at them, seeing what their arguments are, seeing what their background is. But if somebody meets a candidate, we know that we have a chance with that candidate, with that person. Not only that, they'll mention it to their neighbors if they live in a place where they talk to each other. And they'll say hi, and guess who was by my house, and she seemed really nice, or he seemed like a really good guy, and blah blah. The second most impressive thing that will make a person in a neighborhood sit up and take notice is if a neighbor comes and knocks on their door. If someone who lives within 2 or 3 blocks of you, if you live in a typical city kind of environment, comes up and knocks on your door and says, yeah, I really like this person. Or that someone will open their home and they'll invite all the people that live around them to come have a coffee and meet a candidate. Your neighbors will be so impressed because you had them in your home. Well, when COVID hit, that kind of became problematic. So what they went to is they started writing postcards, and they will give you a list of people that live in your area. And you can say, hi, I live in your area, and this is a candidate I'm supporting. And I don't know how youngins feel about this now, because I'm not one. But I love getting cards, from somebody who's in my area. And so there's a lot of older people who've gone to writing postcards. And the other one is if you can find a literate person. If you're literate, or you have a strong opinion, or you're there because of these issues, you can write letters to the editors. And I think if you look through these websites Sheila and I are giving you, once again, it's Ballotpedia, League of Women Voters, FEC, federal, and that's the .gov, Open Secrets, and Follow the Money. Those are places to get information that you can call through yourself and say, is this right? Is this real? And then Brennan Center, you can go to their site to look at voter issues. And they've had a lot to do with stalling off a lot of the Republicans trying to change state laws. And then there's a website called Multi-State, and it really goes into the fine points on voting laws. And it's always important to know your rights.
Yep.
There is one more thing you can do. If you live in an area and you feel safe doing it, if you can work the polls. I for 20 some years ran polls in my neighborhood. And the reason I did is, as big a city as Dallas was, there weren't a lot of people. Our little precinct was really tiny, and they would always marry us with some other precinct that was really outside of the purview of where we lived. I mean, it was always like, go find your polling place. And finally, the Republican chair for that precinct and the Democratic chair for that precinct got together, and the Democratic chair knew me, and we talked, and they were looking for people who would make a commitment to run those polls every time. They would give us a set location in a school, just like everybody else had. And it had two functions. One is, because we were such a teeny tiny little precinct, we had a lot of schools around us, some industry, but we had a lot of condominiums and single family housing that it can kind of put together. So people would know where to go. Because I found people didn't go to vote because they said, I got tired. I went to where I was supposed to vote and it wasn't there again. So for the 20 years that I did it, we ran out of a junior high down the street from where I lived. And we would occasionally have other precincts merge in with us because they couldn't find someone to work. And that's really awful. And for people not have a chance to vote because the ever wandering precinct place to vote.
So I am going to place all of those websites under this video, not in the comments, but under this video as the information for this video. I'm going to place them all under there for the ones that she was talking about. And this is a really great opportunity. I think the most important thing that we're trying to get to is get involved. This is a really great place for those who are retired, that they can just literally get involved in their campaign. And it helps with you being able to get out there and talk and things like that. I mean, I think this is like the first time in probably, forever that YouTube has given us a really great platform to push out this information to those who need it, want it, and would like to help. Just sitting at home and making sure that you have voted and you talk to your neighbors is good enough too. Don't get me wrong. You don't have to get out. We're not expecting you to be gun-ho like a lot of other people are. It's just the fact that you give energy of help is also incredibly important. So
I do have one other idea that my friend Rob came up with. He lived in a community where everybody was registered to vote, nobody voted. And he had a dinner party, and he had these 6 friends that he knew what their political views were and stuff. He rented a van, and he said, you don't get to eat until you go vote. He took them during early voting to go vote.
go
and
vote.
then they got
I'll
their
feed
food.
you.
And also if you can make sure if you have a friend say what might stop you from voting. And a lot of times with elderly people, I lived in a high rise that was, you have to be 62 years or better to live there. And during election time, I would go. I had some people, I just made it a deal, and we'd go vote, and then we'd go buy Brahms and get some ice cream. And for them, that was a big outing because they don't have cars.
Yeah.
So reach out in your community, find out any way you can help. The biggest way you can help for sure for me is please go vote. Man, nothing makes me lose my crap like somebody.
Like vote.
Yes, no greed for you.
Exactly.
No, and I just think there are so many people. Can I talk about polling? Do you want me to explain polling?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. When I used to run races, we were such small end races. We were very rarely polled. But I know how polling works because I've worked with places that do voter polling, but they also kind of try to take the temperature of the whole community. So I was part of workshops where we'd take people and get them all together. And polls are based, you're going to, when you look at it at the bottom in the fine print, it will say most likely voters. Well, the most likely voters are people who have voted before, which is what makes this year so unique. A lot of people, I don't know how it was where you were, but in Texas for a long time, to get picked for the jury, to sit on a jury, you had to be registered to vote. And that was a disincentive for people to register to vote because they didn't want their name on those rolls, because there's a certain amount of mandatoriness to being pulled into a jury. Well, then years ago, they changed that. So it's if you have a driver's license and you're registered, or they have some, and I think they have a couple of other ways that they can find you. But to this day, I know people my age who go, oh, well, then they're going to ask me to go down to be on a jury. Well, first of all, if you're my age, they're not going to put you on a jury because they want to know you're going to make it a week. And so it's actually a cutoff. There's I think it's 72 now. You can be under certain circumstances, but that used to be the big drain. I remember as a young person hearing people say, oh, I can't give up time from work and blah, 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 and all a bunch of crap. But they didn't do it for that reason. Or they don't know how. They don't know where to find the forms. I ran before COVID, when Hillary was running against the other person. I had a voter registration thing. I could be a deputy registrar. I could register voters at my table. And once the word got out in that neighborhood that I was there and I could help them register, people came in just to register. Then they hung around the store. And they actually put the forms out on the counter for people could take home. And I had these 3 women who just moved to Dallas from Connecticut. And they said, oh, thank God we found you, because we didn't know how to register to vote. Well, there is always the theory of Google it, but it was back then, and they were about my age. So I helped them fill out the forms, and then I looked up their precinct, and I told them the most likely place they'd be voting on the day of. But then I spent a whole lot of time explaining to them how they had 3 weeks to vote before. And if you can vote early, do vote early, because they can mess less with early vote than they can with day of. And I don't know what games they're going to play. So I could think of 100 different things they could do if they wanted to make sure. But if you vote early and you vote in the machines, and now in Texas, you see your paper ballot before it goes in.
Right.
And most places have gone to paper ballots. But so that's kind of, the history of how you get to vote. And most places now, you can register online to vote. So there shouldn't be any reason you're not registered to vote. But there was a period of time when they made it. Texas has always been traditionally the hardest state to vote in. They've made it the hardest. They've hidden everything behind 100 things. And it's very frustrating for those of us who have always believed in voting. But this year, so in other words, anyone who voted in prior years, and actually the more often you voted in prior years, the more likely a voter you are. I know people, I've talked to a lot of people who said, I've never been polled by anyone. I get polled all the time. I get polled on my cell phone. They see this person who doesn't know how to not vote, and they're going to call you up and see what you're up to. So there's a whole pool of voters that are not going to be reflected in the polls that are out there right now. I know in one state, I had a friend who works analysis of voter stats, and 1 million new voters had registered in that state within the last 2 months when he got the file. And he started looking at it. And usually if you had 1 million voters, it's going to kind of fall out by the demographics of your state. There's so many that are 18 to this and da 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 da. It's going to be heavier in the 50-somethings because by now they understand they have more skin in the game. But it's going to be, if male and female is about 50-50, although I think it's 51% female, 49 male, it's going to come out to be, even between male and female. The first thing he did, because of the Dodd decision to eliminate Roe, was he looked at the women he figured had the biggest stake in this game. He checked how many of that 1 million voters were women between the ages of 18 and 42, figuring they're probably thinking about getting out of the game at that point, having babies. And close to 400,000 of them were women between the ages of 18 and 42. Now, I hope to God someone's tracking them up and making sure they get to the polls, but that whole pool of voters is not going to be counted in any polling they're doing. So, but don't get overconfident on that. And if you know someone in that age group and you just say, are you going to go vote?
Yeah, absolutely. Just keep on asking. That's what I keep on doing. I ask anybody, you vote? You registered to vote? I don't tell them what party or anything like that. All I do is go, are you registered to vote? Are you? That's what I
Mhm.
just keep
Yes.
on asking and keep on asking. So
After Halloween, I start with I'll have a little plaque at the beginning of my thing. Have you voted?
exactly.
You know.
All right. Well, is there anything else pressing that they need to know? I just don't want to make this too long.
No, I understand.
We
And I
lose
probably
them.
bored them to death already. No, I think that's pretty much, those are the basics of what you need to know. And I'll follow Sheila's show when she puts it up. So if you do write comments, how do I find out about, or I live in this state, I'll pull those out and I'll answer you.
Perfect. All right, everyone.
And if you want to join my garden, my shows are on Nancy Jean's Garden, and my stuff is, with the exception of Sunday with Scott Allen, and right now with Sheila, I don't talk politics much because I was in it for too long. And I will confuse you with my trivia. But if you want to come see what else I do, come over to Nancy Jean's Garden. And
Exactly. You do so much over there to help to keep this energy up and running. That's
well, it's self-empowerment. If you want to feel good about yourself, you have to empower yourself. And the way they may have one person may be able to give them $1 million, but one good idea can give them 1 million voters. And that's what we need to remember. There are more of us than the millionaires. And only if we decide we're poor, oppressed, little silly things that can't make up our own mind and don't have control over our own body.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. I mean, I agree. I mean, we have so much to what's on the ballot is more than just a candidate. So
Yep, it's ideas. Also, in all those sites I told you about, if you're having constitutional changes in your state, they'll be on this ballot. So for all those voter laws and all those things they want to change, those will be in that they have to do constitutionally. They will be on that ballot. And that's really even more than knowing the name of the candidate you want to vote for, getting a chance to read those and read an analysis of them, because there are literally, I know people who write ballot propositions. They learn how to write them. So yes means no and no means yes. You have to be aware of what they're really saying in those things. And it may seem overwhelming, but if you got out of the 3rd grade, you can do it.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. And I hope you learned get the information, and of course, get the information out to tell everybody around you, including your dog, to go vote. Go vote.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Nancy.
Bye.
Bye.
State of Florida is under assault tonight, and the damage is likely to be catastrophic.
Here we go again. Hurricane season in Florida. Florida homeowners are paying more for storm insurance every year. What has Ron DeSantis done to help us? Nothing. DeSantis has been too busy running for president to do his job. Cruel campaign stunts.
To be able to go to greener pasture.
Trolling.
I think his hair gel is interfering with his brain function.
Bragging.
I'm standing in your way. I'm not going to let you get away with it.
Raising money for his election. And attacking Florida companies. He did everything but help us protect our homes. Protect the dreams we worked so hard for. Trolling isn't governing. Waging culture wars isn't leading. And Ron DeSantis isn't helping.
The Lincoln Project paid for and